Okay, so my name's Jim Walker. I'm one of the directors at Walk 21, and we're particularly pleased today to have a conversation with Filip van As from the Dutch government. And he's going to be talking to us today about his work around the national walking policy that's been evolving in the Netherlands over the last few years. We're using this as part of a series. We're hoping to speak to at least a dozen national countries to talk to them about their policies and understand particularly about the processes involved that they've used that have been helpful to make their policies more effective. And what we're really doing, of course, lovely as it would be to know just how amazing it is in the Netherlands, and we mustn't take anything away from that. What we'd really like to know is any insights you have that could really help other countries to, maybe they haven't started yet with a policy. You could help them think about how to get started. And if lessons you've learned along the way that you'd be willing to share, we the good and the bad, ideally. I think it might be helpful to recognize that, policy development, policy delivery, policy evaluation, these things, it sounds a bit dry. But I know that you and the way that you've worked in the Netherlands have made it, dare I say, fun. You've certainly made it effective. And we're interested in hearing your story. So, Filip, over to you. Could you? Yeah, maybe you could just start off by introducing us to who you are, how you fit in to the government, and maybe a little bit of background about how you got into this role. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Jim. Well, you already mentioned my name. I work with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands. I have a past in local government. I always mention that because it is very basic to the work I'm doing now. I decided to go to the national level mainly because I found out that it would be necessary to gain attention on walking on a national level to be able to go ahead with this subject. I work for half of my time internally, putting up pedestrian policy in my ministry, and the other half of my time I am coordinator of the national platform. Well, in the Dutch it's called Ruimte voor Lopen. It's more space for walking, you can say. And this platform is existing since I think 3.5 years by now. We started when Walk 21 was organized in Rotterdam in 2019. That was the starting point of the platform. Of course, the period that went before that was the preparation period, but officially the platform started in 2019. I have passed in as a alderman in, for instance, mobility and in public space and other subjects. And in that period, I worked with cycling mainly, and I found out that for walking there was nothing at all. So that was my motive to start this.
It's very interesting. So basically, you were a politician. When we talk about alderman, this is the sort of Dutch language for a politician. Yes. You were an elected member. You were working around the cycling agenda. You saw a gap. You saw a policy gap. You saw a lack of attention. Was that it? And what was that motivation in thinking about why walking? How did you see that?
It started quite simply. My wife complained that I was too much busy with cycling and other ways of mobility, because she said, well, you should pay attention to walking because there's a lot of problems with that, not enough space on the street to start with. And my neighbor, we had an old neighbor downstairs, and she was scared to go across the street, but she has to go there because if she wants to bring out the trash of the
the trash.
The trash bin was there, so she had to cross the street and had fallen several times. It was too scary for her to go there because there's too much traffic, etc. So that started me in focusing on the thing that everybody does, that is walking. And the amazing part that there was, as a matter of fact, there was nothing really nobody was focusing on walking in our country. It's amazing.
I do. Yeah, it's really interesting because, the Dutch are known globally, of course, for your leadership around cycling. You even have the Dutch Cycling Embassy that travels around the world really promoting all the good things that you do for cycling. And a lot of attention goes into that politically as well as resources, of course. So it's a bit of a policy gap. I understand that. And I like your honesty about understanding that it was women and the needs of the elderly, actually, that brought the attention to this gap. Do you see, I mean, we're speaking quite openly now, do you see the vision is that the government might take this on as much as cycling longer term? How long did it take cycling to become the focus of policy attention in the Netherlands?
Yes, but that's a good question because cycling was you can say, the inspiration for me to start on the subject of walking. When I was alderman, I recognized there was not enough national attention for cycling, and there had to be a lot of investments in, especially cycling at train stations. There was not enough money, so there was an urgency to get national attention, and so I started from Zwolle, which was the cycling capital of the Netherlands at that time. With one of my employees, we started the national Tour de Force, what we call them. So a national sort of national platform focused on cycling and to getting cycling on a higher level of attention, and of course the money that should have been involved in there. And that was when I quit as an alderman, I was looking for something new, a new challenge to pick up. And when I found that I would be walking, I had a benefit of my network on a national level and the experience which I had with the cycling topic. So a lot of things we are doing now are a bit of a copycat from this other experience. Of course, there are differences. But then your question, at the national level, it took, I think, about 7 or 8 years from one employee at my ministry for cycling to a team of 10 or 12 persons who are involved in cycling right now. So maybe it takes another 5 to 7 years to get walking at the same level. But I must be honest, with cycling, there's a lot of investments involved. You have to bike. That is a capital good. And so internationally, there's a lot of money to be made by companies to sell bikes, to sell knowledge about bikes, etc. So the Dutch Cycling Embassy wouldn't have been there if there wasn't a lot of money to be made from it. And I don't think that will be the case in walking quite soon.
We'll come back to the money a bit later, maybe, but I do like the idea that you're there at the beginning here, lighting a fire inside the ministry. And your ministry is a ministry for infrastructure, water and infrastructure. I think that's how it translates. But that basically is the transport department, isn't it? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
There's a bit more than that, but it's the main part, which is relevant for now. Yes.
Yeah. And so there, your main remit, or the remit of that department is, would you say it's about safety, road safety? Is it about infrastructure, as in the title? Is it about building things? What would you say is the culture, the dominant culture there?
The dominant culture is that they are focusing on mobility on a national level, or at least the level that is not especially local. And so there are mobility questions which have a relationship with provincial roads or maybe even local roads, but there has to be a higher level involved for the ministry to be interested in the theme, because we have a decentralized governance in our country. So if things are at best be taken up on the local level, then it's not the national level that it's is involved in that. So walking was always being seen as something local. So there was nothing for walking at all. And the focus was on the motor vehicle, the trains, planes, of course, internationally, and on water. The ship. The ship is also very important, also internationally. And cycling has been getting more attention recently because of the way that cycling between cities, and they're relatively close by in the Netherlands. It's a small country, a lot of cities and smaller places, so the distance is relatively small, and that means that if you are cycling more, then there are less cars on the road. So there's a benefit when there's congestion to change to the cycle path, and that's the reason why it was interesting in that topic.
That's very interesting. So basically, congestion relief and shifting travel behavior.
Model shift is quite important. Of course, also road safety is an issue. That was the reason in advance when the National Cycling Union started. It was because of road safety, but there are now, the country has a lot of cycle paths because of this safety question. So there has been a lot of input in addressing that question. And that's also one of the reasons, maybe you can say, why for walking is less and less space, because in the inner cities, for instance, smaller roads, then you have the car has to get in the road, then it's a bit more safe for cycling to have also your separate lane, and then in the end there's not much space left for walking. So the sidewalks are really small sometimes.
And yet more people are walking than cycling in the Netherlands, despite this sort of the visibility, I guess, of the cyclists. Your data does show that more people are walking, and yet without that policy support, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, and that will be a common experience, I think, when people study their own data sets in lots of countries. So you started something, and it's interesting you call it a platform. And this, what you've described, the Tour de Force for cycling as well, sounds like a platform. What is this platform, and why did you start with a platform, not start by writing, a policy document? What's the difference here? Why is this approach, the Dutch approach, maybe better?
Yes, I didn't start with the ministry because I quit as an alderman, and I was looking for a new challenge, and I started looking around to find people who have the same idea that there should be more attention for walking. So this is a bottom-up process. The Tour de Force for cycling was, you can say that it's a national organizations and the national ministry which is involved in the Tour de Force. And so the main difference is that the platform for walking is bottom-up. The partners, there are a lot of partners, about 60 at the moment, and those partners are individual cities, provinces, for ministries, and a lot of knowledge institutes and organizations concerned with all types of walking. So we started with where is the energy, which organizations see it as a necessity to improve the situation of walking in the Netherlands, and they're just joining forces. That's I think in the basis how our platform started. And the ministry where I work right now is one of the partners in this platform, but it's not you can say not a governing party or whatever. Everybody is equal, although it is the same that I'm a coordinator. So the ministry gives me the time and possibility to spend time for this platform, but it is one of the partners, just like every other partner.
You launched the partnership, the platform, as you call it, I think, as you said, at Walk 21, when it was hosted in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. I remember it. It was a stage full of people, I think already you had at least 40 people probably on the stage,
Yes.
and a really good atmosphere. I just felt that there was a real energy there. You obviously spent a lot of time finding these people in different ministries, institutions, NGOs, etc. How did you get that sense of shared ownership of the agenda then? Were the doors already open? Did these people sort of come on the stage and say, of course we want to join that, or we've been waiting for that to happen? I'm just trying to understand, how easy it was to bring people together.
Well, I think it took about 1.5 years from the first contact with a few organizations. WandelNet, it's a walking
the recreational group, aren't they? Yeah.
Walking. That's one of the organizations. And another was a Knowledge Institute, CROW, which is a specialist in mobility and public space. You could say advising.
Road safety, aren't they?
Yeah. So those two organizations were with me and the Ministry of Infrastructure, which already said, well, just start with this. So I got back support from this ministry, and then we started with a few organizations to just think about it. What should we do? And then we just went through the country, going to a few municipalities and provinces to collect a bit of money to start this process, because you can't do anything without money. So we had the first idea what kind of focus we should have, and then we found a number of municipalities and provinces, and then in 2019, this I think this whole year, we just came together and discussed what should be the themes, what should be what are we talking about if we are talking about walking. So we came to the conclusion it's walking and staying in public space, so also sojourning, and the ages from the youth playing in streets to the older people. Walking should be involving also people which are having a disability, and but also people who are who are running or walking or sojourning, or the postman, or whoever is doing something on the street with his legs. And so that's we found a bit of the definition from walking. We defined that, and then we defined some main objectives, and that we brought that together. And that was the point in October 2019 when we started the platform. And the year after that, we really got together and worked on a strategic agenda. And well, we can maybe come back on that later in this conversation. But the starting point was really a basic energy on what we wanted to reach.
And just to clarify, when you talked about you have to have money, which I'm sure we'll hear about a bit more later. It didn't cost anything to be part of this platform, did it? Or did you charge a subscription? Or when you say money, did you ask people?
We collected some money, so we asked every city and the province to, please, could you give 10,000 euro? Could you give 20,000 euro? And the ministry donated a bit, and so we had a bit of money together, 100,000 or something like that euros, or 150,000, and we used that money to facilitate the process of starting this platform. And then after 2019, we have found an agreement with 3 ministries: my own ministry, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of you could say nature and
sort of biodiversity, I think, isn't it? Greenery.
Green, yes. And those 3 ministries each donate a bit of money every year, so that we have a working budget. We can have our website and organize meetings, etc. So we have a bit of money to be able to operate, but there is no money for projects, etc. Process money, there is not really project money.
I like that idea that right from the beginning you were thinking about money. And so it wasn't just a talking shop, but you wanted to get out and walk the talk, not just talk the walk, I guess. um, to get 56 members, or nearly 60, as you say, I think now, seems like it's still growing. That you're obviously doing something right. You found an energy that people want to be part of. And I think the number of ministries, education institutions, NGOs, it might be difficult sometimes to get that balance right. And is there a point when you've got almost too many people in the room? Is it still able to make decisions if you've got 60 partners? Do you then have to come up with all these criteria for votes to make decisions and quorums and that sort of thing? How complicated is this?
Well, we don't make it complicated. The platform has no formal structure. We have but the most important things we discuss on meetings of the platform, and mostly they are online, so there's not a problem with extra chairs or whatever in the room. So the discussion on the strategy, and last year we discussed a few spearhead points where we really want to make more and more, put more energy on. Those questions we are doing together with partners. We invite them to participate in working groups to discuss the different subjects, and when the groups have their finally have their results, they presented it in a platform meeting, and then we collectively felt, well, this is the right way to continue. And this national strategy we made a year earlier, we also had the organizations for provinces and municipalities. They also gave their approval of this strategy. So where we lack the money to really operationalize the goals we have, there is no lack of support, because everybody wants the same. We have a vision of 2040, when we want, what we want to have reached by then is walking friendly country with a number of things connected with it. We have a strategy agenda to 2030, and we have a kind of activity agenda for the years 21 to 25, but there is not a specific date for it. From then and then it should have been finished, because it depends on the partners what they invest in these goals, how soon or how late things are reached, the goals are reached. So and there maybe we can come on another point just now, because there's also a city deal space for walking, and that's really.
I'll come to the city deal in a second, if I may, because I think that's a sort of delivery point, isn't it? And yes. We're talking here about a sort of 20-year vision, a 5-year plan, a common ambition. This is all very good, and it's nice to understand about the participative approach that you've got, and that it's non-hierarchical. Everyone seems to have an equal voice in this. It's a very Dutch way. But it seems to work, and you went for money from the beginning. This is all useful to understand. But my sense was at the start, you posed 3 questions to the group, or the group decided that they had 3. Maybe this is the role of the working groups, but 3 things that they wanted to know. One was around infrastructure, and it was about what does the ideal pedestrian city look like. A second one around campaigns. How do we encourage people to walk? And I think the third one was around capacity building. Who needs to be part of the team in order to make this happen? I think it's quite bold to start with questions, not answers. You weren't already coming up with decisions about what you were going to do. You were saying, what do we want to understand? What do we want to learn more about? Can you tell us about, is that a typical way that the Dutch sort of come at policy? Is that you sort of set a question and then decide, how can a policy support this?
Well, I'm not sure if I would call it a question, because what we decided on, there are 3 areas in which we have to make progress. And so, indeed, in the public space, a lot has to be done in public space to become this pedestrian-friendly society. We have to encourage people to walk more, and the third one, and that's maybe one of the most important, and that is the policy that everybody on a local level, provincial, but also national, should be taking walking in account when they have their own policy decisions to be made. So those are the three working lines that we work on, and every three of those working lines we had to start at zero. So you can want a lot of things, but if you start at zero, you have to explore. And maybe that's why you find a lot of questions.
Well, it makes sense. You've ended up with 27 priorities or something, or 27 actions over the next 5 years. I mean, that's quite a long list. And some of them are quite ambitious when you talk about training systems and design guidelines and things. I mean, you could spend hundreds of thousands on those at a national level.
Well, the design guidelines, you mentioned about them. They are almost finished now. In the autumn, they will be finished. So
okay, so there is progress being made on this long list. Is it you keeping an eye on that sort of checklist and sort of making sure that that things are happening on all of them all at once, or how are you sort of prioritizing that list of 27 actions?
We have a small bureau in which I am the coordinator, and a few colleagues from Wandelnet and the other organization, CROW. We the three of us form this bureau. We also have not assistance from a colleague of mine at the ministry. So there is we are monitoring the progress. But the most important thing is that a number of organizations already put energy in those topics. So CROW is heading this project for the guidelines, and there are a lot of partners participating in this project. But this organization is heading that, and they have also collected money for it. My ministry is one of the parties that donated money to make this possible, and that is the way we work. So we have a lot of ambitions which are marching now, but there are also ambitions which are laying now more back because there is not enough energy on it, and we have to be a bit more patient maybe before we can come to that.
So basically, every action has a lead, or will have eventually, and those people responsible for that leadership have to create the budget or find the budget from different partners, and probably most of those partners are the people who are in the platform in that network. So you've got a conversation already started, the fact that they're already there, and gradually you're getting through those. Are you confident that the 5-year timescale will be a feasible one to deliver the 27 things? Is there flexibility about maybe some of those things changing over the course of the time?
Well, when we made all those 27 points, they are different in intensity, and the reach of all those points is also different. If you look critically through those points, then you can easily be critical on them, because there are some really important points, and we all take we all are working on those, but there are also a number of them by which we had to be honest. Well, we don't have the time, we don't have the energy, we don't have the partners to work on that one. So I think we are really making progress, especially because we now have a city deal, and there has been a lot of extra energy in the city deal to march ahead with a number of projects. For instance, the collection of data, the walking data. It is very important to know where people are walking or where they don't walk, why they walk there, and etc. The direction they come from, the routes they take, and why they take those routes. Where are interruptions of those routes, and all that type of questions ask for data, and a lot of our partners are working on that right now. So
okay. No, that's a really good point about data. And look, some of the early, or I think your 1, 2, and 3 commitments or priorities were all about leadership. About working on the political agenda, and getting that cross-disciplinary support, and sort of getting more integrated actions in for policy. I get the point about data, and often we talk about data as the second step for towards walkable communities. But that first step about commitment, how is it at the moment? How are you getting on with influencing the political agenda and developing something tangible into a sort of policy document rather than this sort of action plan? You've gone straight to an action plan, but do you at some point envisage that you'd write a sort of policy as well?
Well, the problem with the policy is who is the owner of that. And in a lot of countries, the system is that on a national level there's a policy, and that they roll it out over the country. But it doesn't work that way in the Netherlands. So there is. I'm working on within my ministry on a policy from the ministry. But then I have I think from the ministry in the subjects which are important for this ministry. So then road safety is important, and the transport with public transport, and the first and the last mile of the public transport is important because it's important for the ministry. So yes. I always see the glass half full, and in this in the last years I found that I have colleagues in those areas which really are taking walking into account right now. So that is something which I call progress. Last week we had, for the first time in the Netherlands, there was a debate in the second chamber, political debate on active mobility. Well, it was 95 or 98% was about the bike, but there were also a few questions on walking, and it's the very first time that political party asks questions to the minister about walking. So yes, bit by bit growing attention. It's getting on the agenda, but the most important thing is that there are a number of quite important policy documents written right now. For instance, a mobility document 2050, where the long-term mobility developments are described and the directions we should take. And one of the questions was, is walking being part of this document? And the answer could be yes. So we are taking the modality of walking serious enough to put it in this type of documents. And that's, I think, the small steps we are moving forward. But I think that the most powerful step forward could well be in the next coming years the questions from the municipalities and provinces to the national level. Please help us realize the things we need to do at the local level. And
that's interesting. So it's again a bottom-up sort of policy development process where you've instigated something.
Yes,
yeah, it'll come from the municipalities. Yes. Very interesting. Yes. It's interesting you say also about that a ministry couldn't lead because you've got a joint agenda or a mixed agenda. What we'll hear when we talk to some other countries is how they've had to work quite hard to actually bring ministries together. I'm thinking about Austria, for example, which is a transport and an environment strategy written jointly. First time they've done a joint strategy, as I know. And in Scotland, I think we'll hear how that they've joined up with transport and health and sport. And I think actually something to do with housing and, several other departments. When I see the Dutch agenda, you've got some clear responsibilities around safety, or it could be about greener environments, as we've talked about. It could be about less traffic or more active societies. Has it not been done before, where you could bring all those sort of ambitions together and center it around, a common policy? Or is it better to just, as a team, I guess this is what you've created, to sort of have the influence to make sure all that their policies include walking? That seems to be the preferred model. So no one particular walking policy, but you've got a coordinated ambition in a center, and you all go and influence your own areas to make sure that walking is included as a solution in the delivery of those other ambitions.
Yes, I guess that's the situation, and I think people, if they know the Netherlands, then they know that nobody wants to be told anything, and so there's everybody is equal. So it is very important that the ministry is not playing kind of boss about the others, and especially if you want more than one ministry involved, and we have 4 ministries involved, cooperation is the best way to do that. For instance, now from my ministry, I'm working together with the Ministry of Health to start filling a toolbox on stimulation of walking. We are hoping to do that in the next 12 months to finalize it. And we are also I'm working with the City Deal space of walking from my ministry. So it's a cooperational activity to make a toolbox on a walking policy. So what we are putting in that is something we do together with a lot of parties, especially local parties. And what we want to reach with that is that on the website of our platform, there will be practical toolboxes for municipalities and others who want to start something with a local policy on walking or a provincial policy on walking. And that's the way I think at this moment, at the national level, you can mean something to add something to what is happening in the country.
What you're doing, you're sort of enabling, aren't you? You're enabling people. You're making it easy for people to take it on. So having highlighted the fact that there was a policy gap, you're now making it easy for people to get in there and do more quickly. I think that's very positive and an interesting approach. Probably quite unique, actually. We'll see as we go around and speak to other people. Let's talk about this city deal then, because I'm interested again. You immediately, well, maybe not immediately, but within a year of launching the platform, you were already thinking about funding, and you wanted to actually get on and deliver something. And this funding plan that you had, this city deal, actually meant that you had to bring all those partners together who had some funding and talk about actually doing something on the ground, making something change that you could see, I guess. You've got 8 cities, I think, spending money, actually delivering something. How did that come about, that funding pot? And was it difficult to make that?
Well, to be honest, the starting point of that was when I met a colleague from the Ministry of Internal Affairs in a big conference, national conference of the Agenda City, as we call them in the Netherlands. And this Agenda City has one of the instruments is City Deal, and there are a lot of city deals on a lot of different subjects. And when we spoke together, he said, "Well, it could be interesting. Walking is, as a matter of fact, is one of those themes which could fit in this idea of a city deal." And so he brought me into contact with one of his colleagues, and we quite quickly recognized that it could be a really speedy process to start the city deal, because normally you have to find a number of cities who want to work together and other parties, and now we already had a group of cities who want to to start a lot of activities. And so there's a starting point, there is a platform. And so we decided on a short period of exploring, finding cities who want to work together on it. And a number of cities from the platform stepped in, and they said, okay, we will donate every year. It's not a big amount of money. It's for every city 10,000 euros in a year. And the ministry pays 30,000 a year. And so altogether, there are a number of other parties. I think it's 28 partners in this city deal, of which 9 are cities, and 3 ministries, and they have decided on the same topics as the partner, as the platform. So the same 3 topics are also embedded in the goals of this city deal, and it started in 2020. It will end next year, in the autumn of next year, and we are, well, from the beginning we had to explain to people what's the difference between the city deal and the platform. And the city deal has a page on the platform website, but we just decided, well, it is interesting, it is a creative process. The city deal itself is a creative process, learning to work together, building a network, etc. And so we just said, well, we just step by step, we will find out how it will evolve. And it evolved in a very good manner. One of the
so you weren't too descriptive then. I mean, I see some of the cities like Groningen, they're focusing on school streets, I think, and lowering traffic speeds, just as an example, with the idea of having an impact to sort of make safer environments around schools. Rotterdam, I think they're also looking at low traffic neighborhoods, 30-kilometer layouts, removing parking spaces, just to give people a flavor of the sort of interventions that are happening with this 40,000 euros, with the idea that they want to create safer streets for pedestrians and encourage more everyday walking. Have you defined those outcomes, or suggested the outcomes or the target, actions even? To what extent did the national government set the agenda around, there must be a definable outcome or a measurable outcome, or has that been, again, more bottom up?
Well, there is a special format for city deals. City deals signed by a minister, by the board of a municipality or of a province. So it is really a commitment, and there are a number of goals that they set to be reached. But those goals are mainly the process goals of that, and organizations learn to work together, networks are being built. A number of goals, like, for instance, the things you mentioned about the 30-kilometer roads, etc. They could be brought into this contract, you can say contract, by the partners who wanted to contribute. So there was a quartermaster. I don't know if it is the correct word in English.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah.
Yes, and she explored what the goals would be of the partners to the part that would join, and they all have their goals. For instance, my ministry is one of the partners, and the goal of the ministry is to improve road safety, especially in relations to public transport. So that is one of the things. And I'm working on a project with 3 cities concerning this specific topic. So then the result is maybe not quantitative, but the result is qualitative, and has to be reached. So there will be a report at the end of the process. But most important is that all participants are enthusiastic about this project in which they participate.
And it's specifically about walking, which is quite interesting. Would you say that it wouldn't have happened, and this focus on helping pedestrians wouldn't have happened if through City Deal, or maybe even in cities, without without this network, without this platform, without this ambition. You've helped define that, and so we've now got specific actions that are definitely benefiting pedestrians. It probably wouldn't have happened without that. I mean, did it happen previously? I think not.
I think this was a major basic asset, you can say. I don't know what would have been now if there was not a there hadn't been a platform, but it certainly helped.
Yeah, but when I see the interventions, most of them are about safety, and it's about streets. It seems to have picked up the sort of priorities of clearly your department, and maybe Crow. I'm conscious that when you talked about that executive, your core group, you also have recreational walking in the core group as one of your executive. Do they feel that they're getting enough investment at a city level, or and are these cities, at the moment, most of the cities are quite big ones. Are they doing enough in rural areas or on the edges of cities as well? How does that balance, or do you think that might be a next step for a second city deal?
Oh no, I think the organization One Bandelnet is participating in the city deal, and there are several partners also with a focus on nature, green, and accessibility of the green space inside and outside cities, and to improve that. So there are. It's not the only organization for recreational walking involved. And they are certainly reaching results. So I don't think they are not satisfied. They are quite satisfied with what is going on now.
Okay. Look, you've explained to us very clearly that how you started the process, the development of a plan, the sort of scale of the vision, and you've gone very quickly into actions, and you've been spending money, delivering things, making changes already. What about evaluation then? Will it be in terms of success? You've got that 20-year vision. How are these actions? How are you going to evaluate that these actions are having an impact on that vision? Is that clear yet, or is that something to sort of evolve once we've got more feedback, maybe from the city deal examples? What are your thoughts on that at the moment?
It's a good question. We don't have an arrangement on that, but we are more focusing on where we should make much more speed in what we want to reach, because in the last few years we had, of course, with COVID, a lot of wind in our back to improve the climate for walking, and there is much more attention for walking right now. So we are more focusing on where can we speed up a bit than when are we monitoring the results. We should be focusing more on that. So it's a good attention point for me now. But more energy is going into how can we accelerate. And the city deal was what I always call an outboard motor for the platform. And at some time the city deal will finish in 2024, the end of 2024, and then we want to incorporate all the results of the city deal in this platform, and then we hope in this period also to find new ways to accelerate. And
when you talk about speed, is there a particular pressure? Is climate, for example, the urgency of climate agenda, is that forcing the speed quicker, or is there more attention? You talked earlier about safety and congestion being core drivers. What is the speed demand?
Yes, traditionally it's those are the core propellers, you can say, for speeding up. But of course, climate is an important issue, but they are always measuring the results. If every climate measure should be measured in, okay, this is the intervention and where should it result in. So that you need to have a situation right now, and then you have to prove that the intervention has this result. And it's quite difficult if it concerns walking. It is more interesting. We have now a program to enhance the number of houses which are built, because we have a housing shortage in the Netherlands, and there's a lot of money now going to make possible that there are a lot of new houses are built, and of course the infrastructure has to be in place for that. And there's a focus on active mobility because they want to have less attention for cars, for motor vehicles, and more that people with the 15-minute cities, etc., are able to cycle or walk to places where they want to be. So in this process, we are now trying to plug walking more in, because there's a lot of money involved in that.
Yeah,
so it's not
no, that makes sense. Yeah,
but it's more that in this area is money, and we want to plug walking into this subject. So that is one of
I think that's very interesting. Getting residential neighbourhoods more walkable, and particularly as they get the design right for new build. That's really interesting. Thank you. But we're almost out of time. I wanted to just give you. I know it's gone quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But I just wanted to ask you maybe about a challenge, that you found along the way that maybe was hard to overcome, or something that you had to overcome. Is it this? You don't seem to be limited by a lack of political attention. You've been patient for that, and that seems to be coming now. You haven't sort of been concerned when you've that it was only you. You found 60 friends, and then you kept going. You didn't have any money, and you've generated a budget. What are there any challenges that you've found more difficult, or things that you still have on the agenda to still sort out?
Yes, there's a lot of things that I want to change. For instance, enough money for the spearhead points we have now we have formulated last year to continue. We don't have enough money for that, so we have to choose which ones we will pick up first. So money is the problem from the beginning, you can say, and because walking is not recognized as an important subject. It is important if you talk with people, but not when money is being divided. Then the other powers are more or bigger. So the struggle for money is always won by the large parties, you can say, and it is a very intricate play to get a bit of money for the things which are important. So I think the main thing should be hoping that there will be a national government, a political setting in which is recognized that walking is important, that investment in walking is important, and there will be more national funds to enhance to this local steps they are taking. And that's one of the reasons why I look to Austria, where they have found a way, and there are more countries, in Ireland and Scotland, but especially Austria, because it's a federal state, and they have the same kind of organization as we have. So I hope to learn there how to enhance this political commitment, also financially. I think that's the main thing.
Financially, yeah.
Yes.
And a lesson for others, from the things you've learned, what would be your lesson that you would want to share with other people, maybe those who haven't started yet? Would you recommend this as a practical way that other countries could start, or would you do it differently?
It depends on where what type of country it is, but for me the most rewarding is, and which generates the most energy, is finding organizations, companions who have the same ambition. So start with ambition, and in the Netherlands that works, but there's always a lot of frustration because not everybody wants the same thing. So you have to well, we have had a lot of struggles getting where we are now, but I think it's almost logical if you know that people always want different things, and getting all the people in the same direction is it is quite an investment in time, in energy, but it's rewarding. So that's maybe the main lesson. I be patient, stay patient, and always look at the glass half full and not half empty.
Very good, thank you. And look, just as we're wrapping up, I'm coming back to your wife and your neighbour, your elderly neighbour. Do they feel you carry on that conversation that do they see progress, or can you appreciate that their demand for better value of these issues that were affecting their lives? Do you feel that you're able to translate their needs into the delivery in the way that you're working? Has there been progress? Do they see that impact yet, or are you still motivated by them?
Yes, I'm still motivated by them. I don't know about my neighbor because we moved twice since then, so I have not seen her for quite a while. But my wife is still very enthusiastic on the things I'm doing, so I think I'm doing something good.
Yeah, no, that's great. And look, you've got a female minister at the moment. Maybe that will help in terms of getting these reality of people's experiences walking in the Netherlands being clearer, making them more visible, making more personalized maybe. But do you think that will help in the future?
Well, I have to say that we have a minister. The real minister is a man. What we call in abroad are staatssecretaris, state secretary. You can call minister when she's going abroad, but she is the one leading the subject I'm on walking. I think she is more enthusiastic about active mobility, and I hope in time she also will be enthusiastic about walking. But her focus is mainly on cycling, to be honest.
I like the fact that you're evolving the language, and we've gone from cycling to walking, and now we're meeting in the middle with active mobility, and maybe things are changing, as you say. Things are starting to happen in Parliament. They're clearly starting to happen, more than starting to happen, actually on change on the streets, as well as a great set of actions. Filip van As from the Dutch government, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing with us your thoughts about what's working, how it's actually been developed. I think it'll be a fantastic insight to people, and I'm sure an inspiration. So thank you very much for being part of us today, and continuing to be part of our network. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you very much, and you're welcome.